That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. Welcome to the Great Old Ones Gaming Podcast. I'm Nate, lost in time and space.
I'm Man from Leng, host of the Whisper in Darkness YouTube channel.
And I am Innkeeper Vase Odin from the Twisted Tentacle Inn.
And this is Nathan of the Arkham Horror Images of Madness, I guess, Instagram.
Ooh. So, yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
So this is going to be our crew, our four-man crew moving forward now. So you guys are just going to have to deal with it, I guess. You being the listener, obviously. And obviously the three of us is too. So, yeah, so why don't we go ahead and move right into the mythos phase here and get into our first topic. What do we want to talk about first?
Side note, I have an open phone line, so I'm going to have people calling in probably every hour on the hour giving us questions. So go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. Yeah, so topics on hand for tonight's podcast. We're going to talk about our favorite three solo investigators. We're going to talk about the Arkham in Flames event that happened last weekend that Nathan was a part of. So he's going to give our thoughts on that. We're going to discuss some player cards from the Circle Undone and what we think about those. And then we're also going to talk about the secret name and our thoughts about that. And then we'll move right into the enemy phase, and we'll talk about some fan-made events, or fan-made scenarios and other cards. And, yeah. And hopefully that'll be an hour and a half, so we'll see. All right. Yeah.
And see, I think that's fascinating because I would never say scenario. I would always say scenario. I think that's an East Coast thing.
It must be.
I never even noticed the difference, to be honest.
Why did you just text me? Why did you just text me that right now, Base?
So, Nathan,
right.
You weren't here last week, and I think it was because you were out of town. Is that right?
This is true. Right before I segue into that, I just wanted to say that I had an absolute blast listening to the first podcast. Is it the 0 episode or the first that I heard?
I guess it'll be 1.0.
Nice. I had an absolute blast listening to that and taking notes, and I was like, this is really fun. I might even get to join one day. This is fantastic. I just wanted to say, along with everybody's little build-up, that I play roughly 3 to 4 times a week, and in my own head, and as everybody probably knows from the Facebook community or from Instagram, I tend to set up a lot of stuff because I like atmosphere. But I just wanted to say that I am proud to join you, and I'm really excited to go forward. So I just wanted to get that out there before we got going.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have not seen Nathan's setups for his games, they're just mind blowing. I mean, he puts little miniature.
Too obsessive.
No, they look amazing. There's like little houses and little cars. There's parks. I mean, it's incredible.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm installing a little power station so I can get an actual trolley, and doing like a what do you call it? Mr. Rogers. Remember the kingdom and everything. Populated with a bunch of people. Yeah. It's a work in progress. I really can't talk much about it. Matt Newman has sworn me to secrecy. Right. So going into Drawn to the Flame, Arkham in Flames, hosted by Drawn to the Flame, I was able to go fly over to London for a couple days there in Waterloo, and it was amazing being surrounded by 70 or so people. Real quick highlights: people dressed in character. So there was a Zoe with blood splatters on her. There was a Sefina Rousseau, I believe, the painter, with a paintbrush. Did not have paint on it. I was curious about that. There was a Yorick with a shovel and a little lamp. I think a Father Mateo, along with some actual beads. So it was a lot of fun, and Frank and Peter were very gracious hosts. They even were nice enough to talk to me while I was there. So a lot of fun.
So what did you play while you were there?
They basically wanted to kind of have it in a way half and half. They wanted to keep it partially structured and partially, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of freeform. So they had labyrinths events. They had both monocolored labyrinths, and they also had regular labyrinths. And then they had an interesting one. They had the Depths of Yoth contest to see who could get the furthest down in the level. Of course, since I haven't done it yet, I didn't participate, but I think the record was level 8. And then they had hot seating, where they would have 2 anchors, and then they would have a fighter and a seeker join the anchors for a game, and then after that game they would switch. The fighter and the seeker would go to 2 different groups. A different fighter and seeker would join, and so that way you can kind of get to meet other people and kind of mill about.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
And, it was really awesome. I mean, just like you could assume from the community, from playing the game, from doing podcasts, listening to podcasts, everybody was awesome. The times we met at the pubs before the weekend got going, we went to the pub that Saturday, and they had drinks that were named for various things. They had Darkened Storm of Spirits. They had Eldritch Thing awesome. Washed up on the shore. Instead of a margarita, they had a Mark and Rita. It was really cool. And then they did pub quiz trivia, but of course all the questions revolved around Arkham Horror and the characters, so everybody got their groove on. And then of course Sunday night after we finished up, we met at another pub, like almost everybody, and we played cards and had drinks and talked about the weekend. But it was, for lack of a better term, it was just a big massive event that kind of left you reeling. So very fortunate to have gone. I recommend all 4 of us go to a future event.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I know from my experience going to Arkham Nights last year, those sorts of events can be, I mean, they're fantastic to just meet other community members and get to hang out and play a few games with people that you would normally not get to meet, much less play with.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there were people there from, let's see, the guy who did their logo for Drawn to the Flame, Ben, from Sweden was there. I met people from Switzerland, Germany, all over Europe. Some people, I want to say there were some Canadians. There's another person from California. Side note, I was hosted very graciously by Chris Silito of By the Same Token, and he gave me a tour of his workshop. And I'm going to put some pictures up and have a contest, because I do contests as well. And so you'll be seeing that too. But that was a lot of fun. But everybody gave. People made fan maids were there. People made tokens were there. Art, podcast, the Arkham Chronicle crew was there. So yeah, a lot of fun.
What is By the Same Token? What do they do?
Well, you can find them on Etsy, etc. But they make, if you've seen them, the investigator board, similar to Team Covenant. Different style, but they have tokens and path markers and all kinds of tokens. Check them out when you have time on Etsy.
Very cool.
Well, speaking of swag, I watched the Arkham Chronicles video about the event, and they surely left out the swag. So you gotta give us the details on the swag, man. Come
on. I could. But I think they're doing a whole separate thing about it.
Are they?
No, I think they are. So you're just gonna have to. I mean, if you message me, I'll probably tell you. But no pictures. No pictures.
All right. So it looks like you've signed in blood with that contract. Fair enough.
No, it was awesome. Very, very well done.
What was the highlight for you?
It was simply meeting everybody, and you just heard
The
that a
meeting
lot,
the different people.
from everybody. Meeting everybody, and like everybody was nice, and everybody had their own way of playing. But it was just like, I mean, it wasn't. It didn't feel like meeting a bunch of strangers, which is exactly what it was. It was meeting a bunch of friends that you had yet to meet, and as soon as you met them, you were just like, oh yeah, that's why we play this game. Oh, someone said that the community in general is so strong because A, it's cooperative. Makes sense, right? But also because everybody knows going into it that you're going to get your butt handed to you and killed. So it's like there's a certain mindset that has to be okay with that, and so
Yeah, that's definitely true. I've noticed that too. Like, my experiences with playing a lot of Magic and playing now a lot of Arkham, it's
Same.
definitely a vast difference in the community.
Yeah, well, as soon as you put prizes on the line for anything, people start to behave differently, and people's feelings get hurt, and all sorts of problems arise. But I mean, the beauty of this is nothing is on the line, so you can play whatever deck you want, however you want. And
Well, that's not true.
and
Everything's on the line. Your life and your sanity are on the line.
I like what Lang said, except for oh, you put that in your deck. Okay, you know that we're playing on hard mode, right? Okay, I just didn't know. I didn't know if you wanted to succeed or if you were just trying to make us all die. So okay, no, that's fine. No, so I'm not judging you.
No, well, no, that's true. I would, if I did see somebody playing Contraband at the table, I might be a little.
What
judgy.
about the upgraded Contraband?
Yeah, come
Well,
on,
Level
man.
2,
I
Contraband.
don't know about that. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet. But
Oh, now
I
wait
know
a
whenever
second.
whenever I'm on Arkham DB and I look at a deck and I see Contraband in it, I'm just like, oh dear.
Nathan, then you're gonna be upset when I use my Skids deck, because I do use 2 copies of Contraband level 0 in
Do you?
that deck.
Do you?
Yeah.
You know,
and
chloroform
it's
is a
great.
thing. By the way, I heard y'all dissing on Blackjack, upgraded Blackjack, and there were people there, based on the Drawn to the Flame episode, talking about how good the upgraded Blackjack were, running it and like kicking butt with it. So, jury's out. That's all I got to say. Jury's out on that one.
I just saw the word blackjack and I stopped reading.
Either that or you thought 21.
That's my fault, because I haven't looked at those cards nearly enough, and when I see an upgraded blackjack, I can't help
Yeah,
think it's
I
going to
mean,
be much better than the old one.
It's
so.
basically like a machete when you're not engaged or not fighting someone who's engaged, but when you are, it does like extra damage. So it's the best of both worlds. Check it out sometime.
Yeah, but I also play 99% solo, so a
Yeah.
card like
Well,
blackjack
there is that.
doesn't see a whole lot of.
What about two-handed? Do you do two-handed?
Not very often. No.
Okay. All right.
Not
No,
in a
that's
long-
that's
probably
a,
not
that's a
since
very
I-
valid point.
Not since I recorded my my two-handed playthrough of Dunwich Legacy. I don't think I've played two-handed since then.
Cool. So that, but anyway, on a final note, that wraps up Arkham and Flames. I think of the 68, 70 people that showed up, 100 people said that they definitely want there to be a 2020 Arkham and Flames. So just
Nice.
keep that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I hope to go to Arkham Knights this year, so
Cool.
yeah, that's the plan.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, hopefully FFG releases some information about it soon, so I can, plan a trip. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think your best bet for information is just to pay attention to the Mythos Busters Discord,
Yeah.
because they seem to have their finger on the
Inside
pulse of
scoop.
things, and like I know I was waiting and waiting and waiting last year for any sort of confirmation, and it was only on the Discord that they posted a link that FFG had buried somewhere on their website. And I had kept checking the website, and it wasn't probably until like a good week and a half later, maybe even 2 weeks, that FFG finally posted the link, to say it was actually happening and that registration was open. And so
Jeez.
that was it was a little, frustrating just because I know if I hadn't been paying attention to the Discord, it's something that you could very easily miss.
Yeah, definitely.
And not knowing how, I mean, I know it sells out pretty quickly, so I'd be upset if I missed that notification and didn't get a ticket.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me.
I would be too.
Just
I
real
wonder
quick,
if that's why they don't. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to finish saying so. I apologize.
Sorry,
I went to Gen Con this last year, and it of course sold out within like 1 second, the event. So I went 2 hours early and just stood right there, which is how I met Matt Newman and everything. But everyone's like, "Wow, you're going way early." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't understand. I came all the way to Gen Con to do this thing, so I'm gonna get there early." But sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they know it's gonna sell out, and that's why they don't bother so much to advertise it in other places other than the Discord. It seems to sell out pretty quickly, I guess. But if they had a different venue, maybe expanded it, I think it would be just a massive event. I think it'd be really interesting for them to expand that.
Well, the number of Arkham Arkham Horror LCG players that are there seem to be quite a small number compared to the overall. Like the Arkham players sort of fit in one area, at least the ones that were doing the Iron Man. And then the other room that they had set aside was basically just everybody playing Arkham Horror 3rd Edition and Mansions of Madness and Elder Sign and all that. Like the number of tables that were actually playing Arkham, the LCG, was quite small. Like the only night where where Arkham seemed to dominate was when they did the Invocation event, or whatever that playthrough was of the Abyss.
Huh.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I was personally surprised. Like I thought, it's going to be a lot of Arkham Horror people, or Arkham Horror LCG people, but it, besides the Friday night, Saturday, it seemed to be mostly the other way around, where it was the board games that were getting the most play.
That's really interesting.
Surprising.
Yeah, that's surprising to me too. But
I think maybe they were paid actors.
Yeah, I was surprised at the time, but when I look back on it, I mean, Arkham Horror, the board game, has been out, I mean, since the 80s. The first edition, I think, came out, and it's
87, I believe.
It's been supported ever since. I mean, it's one of the first games I ever bought from FFG back in 2004, I think, when I went to Gen Con SoCal. And some guy from an FFG booth was like, "Here, we have this game." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll buy it." And, now with the 3rd edition coming out, it's those board games have a lot of popularity. And
that is true. Yeah, there is a big BGG community around the 2nd edition game.
Yeah, also, Lang, when you're in Portland, you got to stop by my store, because I just realized how easy it's going to be to sell you things. Hey, here's this game, buy it. All right.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works. It's not that hard. There's not a lot of arm twisting involved.
Yeah, that sounds like me too.
Just
that gif of Fry just handing over the money.
And then we're doing. Are we ready to pop onto the solo investigators?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Who wants to start us off?
I guess I will. So, my personal 3 favorites have to be, in no particular order, Jenny, Joe, and man, it's a real toss-up, but I want to say Agnes.
So real quick, why did you pick those 3? Just tell us a tidbit about each one that kind of locks them in for you as like, oh, I want to do solo and I want to do this person.
So Joe is kind of obvious for his power level. I mean, he's just pretty insane in general. Jenny has been my favorite investigator since the 2nd edition board game, so that's just more of a pet thing for me. And as far as Agnes, I just find her to be an enjoyable investigator to play. Just the idea of Peter Silvestri plus forbidden knowledge is fun. So
Cool.
Yeah, I guess I can go next. My top three are.
Well, hold on. Have you played solo?
Have I played solo? That's all I play. It's. I think I've played 3 games in total with groups. I think 2 were at Arkham Knights and 1 was at an Invocation event a couple weeks ago. I think number 3 for me would be Finn Edwards, just because I ran him through Path to Carcosa and thought he was extremely resilient. I had my best result on Echoes of the Past with him. He was able to investigate and kill that monster at the end. Name escapes me. He's got high intellect, high agility, gets an extra action. His willpower sucks, but I found that he's got the tools to, in either Seeker or Survivor to get around it. Number 2 would be Norman, just because I love the deck building puzzle that comes with him. Again, for solo, you need a particular type of investigator, I think, and having the high intellect certainly doesn't hurt. And then I enjoy sort of tinkering around with different builds once he gains some experience points, and you have to start building into that mystic class. And there's a few different ways that you can go. And I think now that he's getting a few more tools in the level 0 Seeker, he's going to be even more interesting to play. And I had a couple very, very good campaigns with him that I quite enjoyed. And number 1 would be Zoe. I just love playing Zoe.
Did you keep it down, Nate? We're listening to Lang. I'm sorry, Mr. Lang. Go ahead, Red.
I just love playing Zoe just because she's got she doesn't have the problem that a lot of the Guardians have with resources. She's got those 5 cards that you can take her in a lot of different directions. Her intellect is not great, but I think she's got enough tools that she can investigate. And I had an absolutely fantastic Path to Carcosa campaign with her. Every game was a nail biter. I was a nail biter right to the very end. I think Unspeakable Oath ended on the last turn. Pallid Mask ended on the last turn. Black Star's Rise, was, I think, the only weak scenario she had in the bunch was a Phantom of Truth, and that's just because she can't evade worth shit. But I just really enjoy playing her. She's and I play her in multiplayer as well when I get the chance. She's just got I like being able to kill stuff and get resources at the same time. So I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit on the intellect in her case.
I like how you just said you're willing to sacrifice while talking about anything Arkham Horror. Okay, I just want to point out for the record, for all the 3 or 4 listeners and for everybody here in channel, I am not following Lang again because he methodically and expertly answers these questions, and I look like an idiot right after he does so. Can I just say that?
There, you said
it.
All
right, good.
Yeah, you said it.
I just want to get that out there. Considering that Norman Withers is one of your favorites, Lang, I think you'd appreciate this. We played in some campaigns, and one of my friends fell in love with playing Norman. Absolutely loved it. And we made jokes about him being an older man yelling to get off his lawn all the time. So I got a AstroTurf carpet sample. So when he plays that character, he gets to put his character up on the AstroTurf. So it makes for a fun game. Anyway.
Yeah, Norman, I always found my interest in Norman quite strange because he's not an investigator that I paid any attention to in the board game at all. And when they announced they were releasing him, I was just like, well, whatever. Like, this guy is... I've never played with him before, and I'm not gonna start now. But once I had a chance to get him to the table, he was. I really did enjoy him.
And I think that that's a really good point that resonates or should resonate with everybody. It's that being is that there's so many flavors and ways to engage with the game, you'll get a vastly different experience, and they're all worth at least maybe stepping out of your comfort zone and being willing to try them.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, once an investigator is released for the card game, between their faction and their deck building, their card pool defines that investigator even more, and makes you see them in a different light. Kind of like, I guess, what happened with Norman for you, Lang. It's really interesting how reading their story in the Investigators of Arkham book kind of gives you just a small insight into them. But once they're released for the card game, and you get to see what cards are available for them, and you start picturing, at least for me, I start picturing in my mind that character with the machete or something like that. It's like, okay, now I can see that person in a completely different light.
I tend to see anybody holding a machete in a completely different light, but that also could just be me.
And I'll also give a shout out to Silas too. He's I do enjoy playing him. He's got lots of fun tricks to that ability to bounce skill cards around is great fun.
I want to play with the trident. Bring on the trident.
Nathan, I grew up. My dad owned a machete. I grew up I was born in Panama, and he used to cut down the sugar cane, barks, so we can just chew on sugar cane. And he used to chop them down with the machete. So it sure does, doesn't it?
I played with Vase recently. We did Carnival of Horrors. And man, he was whooping and hollering, getting all excited. I was like, I am playing this game wrong, because he is enjoying himself quite a bit.
I really like the game.
Oh yeah, just as you should. I hope I didn't cut you off, Lang. Did you get to finish your?
No, I'm just wondering what your top 3 were.
Well, boom, let's do it. Surprisingly enough, I also picked Joe Diamond. And actually, the first time I quote-unquote fell in love with him or really became interested in him is when I saw Vase playing him. I think that same night he was playing him for the first game. What was the first game you were playing?
We did Carnival. We did your scenario.
Oh, well, okay. I really wasn't trying to tease that out.
Right.
Sure, I walked by the table and saw you playing Joe and found out about I had read about it, but I watched you play with it. I was like, oh, that looks cool. But something about that hunch deck, plus, I mean, obviously he's a good seeker, he's a good fighter. No, he's just really solid to play. I love to see what's going to come up, see if it can combo. He's got, like you said, he's a powerhouse, Lang. So I would say Joe is my newest favorite. My second newest is Mark Harrigan. I tend to really be comfortable with the Guardian role. It almost makes me feel a little bit, one-dimensional of sorts, because, you're either fighting or getting clues on a very minimalistic view of the game, even though there's a thousand ways to go different directions. But I really like Mark. I like his backstory. I like the card draw. His resolution. The fact he has 5 fight is kind of cool. And then the challenge, of course, on that line of going insane of sorts when you get below 5 health. So anyway, I like him quite often. But my number one favorite is not one of the favorite investigators. My favorite person to play is Jim Culver. And I find that I think most people consider his passive of sorts bag ability to be underpowered, even though if you play him in Path to Carcosa, he kind of shines extra bright during that. But especially with the newer cards helping you, suss out the tokens and increase the chances of getting an Elder Sign or a Skull, he's seen a little bit more play. But I mean, consistent fight at a 3. He's already got a minimum a 3 book / intellect. And then, of course, 4 willpower, which can be augmented with the key of St. Cuthbert / St. Cuthbert's key, / Holy Rosary, I mean, he instantly goes to a 5. I like playing him quite a bit. Something about the flavor and the mystic cards, they just all coalesce for me.
Huh, I wouldn't have picked Jim, but for you, I didn't realize.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting choice.
Right?
I find him to be really dependent on the makeup of the bag. I mean, his ability can be really strong in a scenario where there's a lot of skulls, and the skulls are really, they have a high negative modifier. Like in the Night's Usurper or the Eternal Slumber, Jim's ability is probably phenomenal, because the skulls are worth, I think it's based on the power of the abyss or something. So Jim is just almost broken in that scenario. But there's other scenarios where I feel like, I mean, it just, his power level just swings so much depending on what scenario you're in.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for me, my favorite solo investigator, I mostly play solo just like Lang. I think about 90% of the time. I play a lot of Carolyn. So Carolyn is my number one favorite solo investigator. People think she's weak, but yeah, it's her deck building is just so open. Kind of like what Lang said about Norman, just trying to pick apart that puzzle. I really, every time a new set comes out, new cards that she can take come out, I kind of just go into playing around with building a new deck for her, and it always comes out completely different than the previous campaigns decks that I made for her. So I really enjoy using her, and I think with this set, she's become quite competent at being both good at combat and good at investigating. My number 2, I guess, would be Joe Diamond. I think, did all of us pick Joe Diamond as one of our top 3?
Did Nate?
I don't think Lang did.
No, I didn't.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
So all but one. But Joe Diamond, for pretty much the same reasons as everybody else. He's just really good at everything. But he's also fun to play. I tend to not pick him for their power level, but Joe is just a really interesting investigator to me. And my third one, I've been really getting into Skids lately. And with this new set, some of the weapon cards that have come out, some of the other rogue cards that have come out, I think Skids is really coming onto his own. He struggles a bit in the first scenario of campaigns when I try to run him solo, but after that, he just really comes onto his own and does really well. So far, I'm really enjoying using him quite a bit.
And he's got double the willpower of Finn, so...
That's a significant
That's
increase.
true.
I can't keep a straight face. I have a quick question to pose to the group, and we'll do the same order we started with. So I believe Nate, Lang, Vase, myself. Is there one investigator that kind of throws you for a loop and you don't know how to wrap your head around them, but you want to try and play them to figure them out?
Yeah, for me, that's been Rita. Maybe that's kind of silly for me. I guess maybe a lot of people consider that kind of an obvious choice, but she's been a really interesting investigator for me to play in solo, particularly. Her means of enemy management is interesting. You're not really kind of like bursting things down like you do with shriveling or bigger weapons. You're kind of like managing enemies longer term, and it's been interesting to try to figure out the ratio of cards you need, because she has some pretty glaring weaknesses that you need to compensate for, like her lack of ability to get clues efficiently and her dying in 2 turns to, you take 2 horror here and then rotting remains and you die.
Yep.
So she's been a lot of fun for me, and another investigator I've had a lot of fun trying to figure out is Jenny too. Maybe again obvious, but there's so many directions that you can take the Dunwich investigators in, and Jenny is kind of a jack of all trades, so it's fun to mess around with the different types of builds for Jenny.
Kind of seeds the imagination. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for me it would probably be Calvin. When they first spoiled Calvin back in, I think it was last March now. I proxied him up and played him through the Night of the Zealot campaign, and was really quite impressed by him. And then I played him through the Forgotten Age, and it was like hitting my head against a brick wall for game after game after game. I don't know how many times I think there was at one point, it's the closest I've come to rage quitting this game was playing Calvin in the Forgotten Age and pulling the overgrowth on the expedition site on turn 1, I think 3 games in a row. And
Do you
I
have
feel
a
like
shredder?
I feel like I should be, like, I know I'm not the best deck builder in the world, and I feel like I should be able to build something that would at least be moderately competitive. But I found with him that I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I just can't seem to find the right mix to. I mean, granted, Forgotten Age is a pretty rough campaign to test against, but I mean, he was released in that box, so I'd expect him to be at least moderately good in it. But
now I would say that Calvin is not necessarily a shoe-in for any one campaign or adventure. That is a weird way to start a character.
Yeah. I mean, I think like it quickly became clear when after playing Preston for testing for just my deck tech episode, that the difference in the support that the 2 investigators got, where Calvin was sort of, well, you can just take enough damage and horror and he'll be fine. Whereas Preston, I mean, he gets family inheritance. He just has resources coming out the wazoo. He's got all these cards, especially in the Circle Undone box. I mean, all of those cards can be used in his deck, and he can be, he struggles in that first scenario because he doesn't have very good intellect and he doesn't have a way to boost it. But once you get past that first scenario, he's just a monster.
Huh.
And with Calvin, it was just like I managed to get him through that Untamed Wilds once, and then of course he hit Doom of Estley, and he just couldn't compete. He was just, you just take too much damage and too much horror, and then of course you draw Curse of Yig and you die. So
you're done. My concern with someone like Calvin, when they release them, there could be new players that buy the current expansion as their first purchase, and
wow, you just
they
got
play
dark.
someone like Calvin. But it's true. It's a concern because I want the game to grow, and I think missteps like that, and Lola and Calvin, a new player wouldn't know what to do with something like that. If an experienced player has trouble figuring out what to do with a character like Calvin,
right?
I mean, can you imagine a new player, and that sours their experience with the game.
Huh. So both of those are very interesting, and Lang, I would avoid not playing Calvin for a while in Forgotten Age because I don't want you to rage quit the game. I would say the person for me, absolutely, that I want to get really comfortable with is Marie Lambeau, because of the Doom juggling that she does. It really makes it hard to want to play with her. It's like saying I'm going to be a snake dancer and I'm going to have a poisonous reptile on me that could kill me at any time. Because that Doom, if you don't get the right combo off, or maybe if you draw the wrong treachery card and you can't mitigate that Doom that you're kind of juggling, you could screw everybody over and advance the scenarios too far and possibly even end the game early. So I want to get to the point where I'm at least moderately comfortable, because I've played her a little bit, and that free spell action, playing a spell or using a spell, I believe, is really fun. But the whole time I'm doing it, I'm like, okay, I've got a fire here. I got to make sure it doesn't take everything with it.
Yeah, I was pretty. I know I was, in my initial reviews of the sets when they were releasing these cards that let you play around with Doom, I was extremely trepidatious about it, and it wasn't until I had a chance to play Norman and I put Blood Pact in his deck and played around with that, and that was that is the way I got comfortable with playing around with Doom, and sort of showed me that, okay, adding a Doom here and there is not the death sentence it seems to be initially. Sure. And then you can work in cards like Arcane Initiate and stuff like that if that's the way you want to go, and then you get comfortable, taking them out at the right time. I know in my Diana Stanley deck I'm playing David Renfield now, and so once you're a little more, I think if you just play with Blood Pact a little bit and get used to how it flows, and I think it also depends on, you need to really know the scenario. You need to know when you can add the Doom and when you can't.
And I think also who you're... Oh.
And which scenarios you're playing. Like if you're playing Where Doom Awaits or any of those, go to town. You can add as much Doom as you want, and you're probably not going to be in too much trouble. But if you're playing Essex County and you're adding Doom, you better be sure it's worth it, because otherwise you're going to rocket through those agendas and you're going to be in trouble.
Sure.
Yeah, I think also it's who you're playing with as well. If you have a group where there's other people playing with Doom, you're kind of stepping on each other's toes, and then you have to be even more careful about it. If you're playing solo, I think playing with Doom is a little bit easier to manage, I would say, than in a multiplayer game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, the investigator that I would like to get better at, and I think some people might be screaming at their computer or whatnot here, but Safina Rousseau. She is great, don't get me wrong. When she works right, she is phenomenal, and she's a lot of fun. And I do enjoy playing with her, but I find her so inconsistent when I build her. I just can't seem to get her right to consistently draw a hand that's going to be efficient. There's times where I play Safina because you can't mulligan your hand, or you get certain cards that you didn't necessarily, or that aren't as useful early on in your events section. It just makes it for an inconsistent play experience for me, and I just haven't been able to figure her out.
Yeah, she is vulnerable to that no mulligan. I think initially I think people look at it and you say, oh, she gets like 14 cards or whatever in her opening hand. That's amazing. And it is amazing until you draw 14 cards that you don't need. And then I don't think rogues don't have a lot of draw, and mystics don't have a lot of draw. So then you're drawing one card a turn, one card, automatically, and then you're going to have to commit actions to drawing cards to get out of that fix.
Yeah.
When like she works, she works great, and I've had pretty good games with her overall. But I have there have been games where I've drawn my opening hand and it's just like, yeah, I would mulligan this.
Right.
And I'm surprised nobody mentioned this, but has anyone had a significant amount of luck or interest in playing Lola Hayes, the actress?
Yeah, I played Lola. I like her. I played her at Arkham Knights.
I would have mentioned,
if I don't want a headache, I don't play her.
Exactly. That the question was someone who you want to figure out and are interested in learning.
Wow,
Lola.
face.
Yeah. That's just how I feel about her. That's one investigator I played one time and never again.
Yeah, I honestly have never even played Lola. Okay. I've been playing the game since TFA, and yeah, it's intimidating, honestly, to kind of try to work her in, especially in a solo game, which is mostly what I play. So it's hard to. I'm like trying to get through all the investigators, and yeah, Lola is probably going to be the last one I tackle.
Yeah, I had some good luck with her playing. I used Sergeant Mook's Wendy deck for Path to Carcosa as the base for it, and was playing Lola on Expert against Curtain Call, and I managed to get to actually like a decent result. I didn't win, mind you, but I was able to, I think, get out with a mental trauma, which is a lot better than I expected to do, because she can basically play all of the cards that Wendy can, and then she has a few, you can substitute in a few others that can solve some of the other problems. But that's a very specific build for a very specific scenario, and I don't think it's something you can just take and run up against other scenario. I know, in fact, I did run it up against Untamed Wilds, and she just crashed and burned. So yeah, it's
Yeah. But speaking of Lola, she does get some new toys to play with in the new Mythos pack. What do you guys? Yeah. We'll talk about those later, but
Oh, and that's an amazing segue. I just have to say this real quick. I'm not sure if everybody here knows Brian David Sandberg, also out of Canada. He does the Rite of Seeking and has a very good sense of humor, I think, because a lot of his stuff he puts up kind of tickle people in the right way. But he had issued a challenge, I want to say in January, for basically you run through the gathering, and enemies can only be damaged by blades. So whatever character you had, if you had a blade in each hand, at the end of a round, you also got like a bonus glory point or whatever. So I'm like, screw this. I'm going to make a Lola Hayes deck because I can. And I did like a Guardian, Survivor, Rogue deck with her. And by turn 2 or 3, I had a blade in each hand, I think a kukri and a knife at least. and I ran through that puppy, just waiting to, like you said, crash and burn and just not get anywhere productive. And I'll be, if the very end fight, I didn't go, vicious blow, kukri, use the kukri again, coup de grace at the very end and finally get him. I was like, oh, that was amazing. But the crisis of identities you really have to work around. And I don't know if it's going heavy neutral items so that you don't have to worry about losing them. But anyway, I had a lot of fun with her. I haven't got to that point where that's my main focus. I actually think I fear the Doom with Marie Lambeau more, but I will work with Blood Pact, like Lang said.
I do want to quickly mention that that's the first time that kukri has been mentioned, and there wasn't laughter proceeding. So,
nice. Well, I did kill. I did kill an elite enemy.
There we go.
Yeah,
twist.
It was used in a non-facetious manner.
I could have said blackjack.
Now you're just tempting me by mentioning kukri and blackjack in the same sentence.
All it needs is some contraband.
Yeah,
exactly.
Upgraded.
Man.
Can you upgrade? Wait, can you upgrade a blackjack with contraband? We'll come back to that.
No, but
one thing. I think last episode you had touched on this briefly, but I wanted to give a quick shout out because I find it effective. You talked about sets or how you would start people that haven't played before. And I think, if I remember correctly, both Lang and Vase were very much of the start with the gathering. And if I remember correctly, I think, Nate, you had said the beginning prologue to the Circle Undone was pretty good because it kind of gave people an overview of everything but Mystic. Is this all correct?
Yeah, for the most part. I'd kind of gauged it more as an open question, as a, like, what do you guys think of running this over the gathering?
I see.
Yeah, but it was an interesting conversation. I think for me, it's more just if you've played the gathering a bazillion times, maybe selfishly for you as the person teaching the game, you might want to just
nice. Okay, so then I guess it is a matter of being selfish. I feel, especially if I sit down and give people my full attention, that I can smoothly and pretty efficiently show them how to play the game and answer their questions. Because, after all, it is cooperative, not competitive. So that does add a nice twist. I find, believe it or not, that the first adventure in the Path to Carcosa in the theater really kind of works well as people are kind of running around the theater and exploring it. That's done really well for me, as well as either of the first two adventures in the Dunwich Legacy box. I haven't blown anybody's heads apart with what they're learning. Only if I think someone really needs it will I do the gathering. Maybe that's selfish of me, but it's gone well. If I did, in fact, screw the pooch and things didn't go well, I would admit it here and now. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think most of the intro scenarios are pretty good that way. I think the Forgotten Age is a little slightly different just because of the way the expedition deck works.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's really the only. I mean, it's not complicated. I mean, the rules explain it very well how the expedition deck works. It's just I think it's a little easier in that scenario to get yourself caught and basically stonewalled a lot earlier, whereas something like the Gathering, if you can't get 2 clues at the study, well, you're gonna really have a tough time with this game.
So how'd it go?
But I mean,
we couldn't get out of the study.
You do read online where people, I mean, you do see threads where somebody's like, I can't beat the Gathering, and so it is. There are people who struggle with it, and
I think they struggle at the very end of the Gathering, though. I don't think they struggled during it.
No, the end can be tough if you I mean, the last time I think I played it, I was playing with Finn, and I had something like 9 resources, and I drew 2 tentacles and then a -4, and I got retaliated and killed. That was after the 3 games with Calvin, so I was in a right bad mood after that.
Also, last side note for now, you're welcome. Does anyone, when they hear the word or the name Lola Santiago, think, where in the world is Lola Santiago? Or is that seriously just me?
Now that you say it.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I apologize.
Now we can't unhear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be every time.
Stop.
It's going to be
Keep
the
on track.
episode title. Where in the world is Lola Santiago?
There you go. So speaking of which, Nate, you had a beautiful segue that I just totally kidnapped and did what I wanted with it. You talked about some of the cards in the Circle Undone. Do we want to touch on that now?
Yeah. What do you guys think about the player cards in the Circle Undone? And then we'll move on to the secret name from there.
Generally, I think I like them. I mean, there's a few in there that I'm not a big fan of, but generally I think each class gets something that they can work with. The card that probably stands out for me the most is Track Shoes. I love that double move. It does make a lot of scenarios a lot easier.
Yep.
Are we focused on the core box for this question, or the core box and the recent expansion?
Well, let's just talk about TCU, and then we'll move on to the secret name after that.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I think each class gets something, and the rogues are pretty. I think that the rogue cards are like the secret cards were in Forgotten Age, where they're like the secret cards were very focused on relics and Ursula, and the rogue cards in this one are very focused on resources and Preston.
Yeah.
I think they kind of had to.
Well, yeah, they did have to. They couldn't release Preston without more support. Otherwise, he'd just be too difficult to play.
So, who do you think gets the best hit from the box overall? Like in terms of like card level, who do you think fares the best in the box, and who do you think fares the worst in the box?
Well, just looking at the list, I'd probably say I think Survivors did the best, and I'd say Mystics did the worst. Even though I really like Deny Existence, I think Eldritch Inspiration, there just aren't enough targets for it at the moment. And Prophecy is one of those cards that, I mean, it's going to work in some scenarios and others it's not. But I think all of the survivor cards, like Track Shoes is fantastic. Act of Desperation plays right into their recursion themes that they love. I mean, the ability to just have a weapon at your disposal whenever you need it is fantastic. And able-bodied is one of those skills that's turned on from the start of the game because you've got no items in play. So I think they did extremely well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you about the survivors. But now that you make your argument about the mystics, I agree. Overall, I do kind of think the guardians also kind of got the short end of the stick in the box. We mentioned it last episode how Carolyn doesn't receive any cards that directly trigger her reaction ability, but yeah, maybe it's just me, but I feel like Interrogate and the other two cards that came in the box feel a lot more niche. Not so much Steadfast, but definitely Delay the Inevitable and Interrogate. Those cards feel pretty niche to me. I don't know about you guys, but
I was about to just say that I thought Delay the Inevitable, while being niche, has some really fun possibilities to it. I mean, especially not with the blind through, but with knowing a campaign a bit, because you can really kind of seed it in for several things.
Yeah, Delay the Inevitable I think is one of those cards I'd like to play with more before I pass judgment on it. I'm a little worried about the resource cost, but it does things that Dodge doesn't do, which I think may persuade some players to give it a try. Like, it does deal with, I mean, for Guardians, with low sanity Guardians in particular, Delay the Inevitable can help them during the Mythos phase, where Dodge does not. And so I could see playing it for that reason. But I'm not a big fan of Interrogate. Steadfast, I mean, Steadfast is great at the beginning, and it gets progressively worse as the game goes on. So if you draw it early, fantastic.
yeah. Vase, what do you think?
I think my favorite card is probably Deny Existence. I really, really like that card. It's gone into pretty much all of my Mystic decks and Carolyn decks and all, pretty much anyone who can take it. I really like how it's not a replacement for Ward of Protection, but it doesn't do some things Ward can do, but it does do some things that Ward can't do, so it complements it really nicely. And even a deck that would have two wards would probably benefit from putting one of each one instead of one of Ward and one of Deny Existence. I think who comes out on top, I think you made a really good case for Survivors. I hadn't thought of it, but I think that's a pretty good case. I think Rogue's got some really good cards as well.
Hold on, I'm trying to cuss at you all in the chat. I just want to make sure I'm spelling these words right.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll wait to get to that.
But I agree that Guardians kind of their cards are a little all over the place. And Nate, when we talked last week, I hadn't heard you say that Carolyn just didn't get enough support until after I re-listened to the podcast. But I agree that the cards that Guardians get in this pack don't really support the Guardian from the pack as much as should be expected. But I think so far the cycle has proven that to not be the case as a whole. But I think definitely the deluxe expansion didn't offer anything for Carolyn as her being the guardian of the set.
And what about you, Nathan? What do you think?
Yeah,
we're gonna let you chime in now. Yeah.
Because I was just waiting to. No, I'm joking. You were all making really good points. Just right before we get to that quick segue, which I guess maybe should be my new name. But what do you all think about the totems or the tarot slot? Do you think overall good, superfluous, gimmicky?
I think they're better for the off classes than they are for the primary classes.
I could see that.
I think it depends. I mean, obviously, Calvin loves the Five of Pentacles, but I think it's one of those cards that you're okay with spending your leftover experience on, but honestly, without them having icons, it's hard to really justify like wanting to play them in my decks a lot of the time, I feel.
I mean, a part of me wants to play it just to see if I get it in my opening hand. It's like, boom, bonus.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Well, I did play a Diana game the other day, and I got the Ace of Rods in my opening hand, and it was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But I also played a Diana game where I drew the Ace of Swords late in the game and had the choice of paying 3 resources for it, at which point they become a little more difficult to justify. I mean, the price is about right for them, just because, you know, you'd pay about 3 resources for a card that gave you, you know, a +1 bonus to one of your base skill values, but you're not getting another ability on top of that. The special ability you get is that, you know, ability to play it for free from your hand if you draw it on setup.
I can't help but
you don't get that additional ability later,
Yeah.
and so you're just paying a lot of resources for one icon.
Well, I can't help but think that there might be something down the way to deal with having an extra tarot, or maybe you can do something special, considering that they made a whole new slot for this cycle. It would be interesting to see what comes out.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to get cards that give us additional slots and ways to play around with the tarot cards a lot more than what is present at the moment. Like I had convinced myself that they were going to what's the mechanic's name? Reyes was going to be the rogue hero or rogue investigator, just because of the tarot cards, and her mother's a tarot card reader. I'm like,
wow, yeah, that's really solid evidence.
Seemed pretty solid to me that she was a lock for this set. Now, I don't know what happens if they release her later, and whether she could have any use any of the tarot card tech as her ability, just because, you know, it is in another box. So
yeah. Speaking of like releasing an investigator, I was hoping, falsely, obviously, with false hope, that they would have released Monterey Jack in the middle of the Forgotten Age campaign. Like, you just run across him, the way they did the intros. If you have Monterey Jack, Ursula Downs, or Leo Anderson, then you have to read this. That would have been awesome. 4 or 5 packs in, hey, all of a sudden you find this person.
Well, he was in there. He was the Yithian.
Too soon. Anyway, I apologize.
That was Monterey Jack. It was Monterey Jack the Yithian.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Wow. I segued with a segue. I apologize for that, but that's how my brain works. Going back to the question, going back to the sets, I actually really like the Seeker cards. I really enjoy the fingerprint kit, and I saw it used masterfully against the Wendigo campaign in London. I also really like the Connect the Dots, even though it is a bit expensive, because you can also pitch it for a couple books. When we get to the cards for the set, however, for the secret name, I do like, of course, one of the secret cards in there, but I really like a Survivor card. Nod over to you, Lang and Nate, and Vase.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, playing a lot of Rita recently, Track Shoes is amazing. So that's been an all-star card for me. And another card that I've really enjoyed is Money Talks. Playing some Preston on the side too. That card has been a joy to play. I also have been trying it out in Jenny, but it's felt more like a trap in that deck than it has actually been useful.
Really? So
yeah.
Kind of a double-edged sword?
Well, it's hard. I think it's more hard to justify in Jenny. I think it's easier just to play cards that boost your stats than it is for someone like Preston. Because Jenny accumulates resources slowly over the course of the game, whereas Preston accumulates them in large chunks. So it's much easier for Preston to be able to use money talks reasonably, whereas I found Jenny ends up kind of just using it as a maybe a +1 sometimes. So it wasn't great in my testing.
Yeah, I
But
tend to think that Jenny usually gets her resources to spend them as quickly as she can.
yeah, I
And
end up
so playing something like Money Talks where you've got to sit on a pool is going to be harder in her. I mean, it's
yeah.
possible, but I think it would just be harder to do that.
Yeah, it's been more difficult. And Cunning, I think, on the same track is a bit of a trap card in Jenny too. But I think I'm going to use this segue to move on to the secret name cards. Intel Report, however, is not a trap for Jenny. That card is awesome.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to be an auto include into any Jenny deck that I build in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Intel Report quite a bit. I like these
Yeah.
upgraded, like where you can pay more to get
Give you
more
options.
stuff out of it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a
I do
really
too.
neat mechanic they started with in this set, and it seems like it's just the rogues that are getting it, but it's still great. If it's only the rogues that get this kind of mechanic, I'd still be fine with it.
Yeah, they're the class that have the resources to spend to increase the effects of their cards, so I guess it makes sense that they would be the ones to have that type of effect on their cards. So,
They could probably implement something for the other classes though, like Mystics can take a horror or something of the sort. Guardian,
They should add Doom.
Add
Add one
Doom.
Doom, add 2 Doom, add 3 Doom.
that would
Well,
be
yeah, no, they're gonna
I'd
use
want a
some for
lot for
Guardian.
that 3.
they would be
I'd want
really
a lot for
popular
the
at
3 Doom.
parties.
yeah, I think another cool card from the secret name is something worth fighting for. I don't really like True Grit, the parody
Right.
version. So, just to quickly read this off, it's a 3 cost asset, a Guardian asset with 1 willpower skill icon with the talent trait. And it also has a sanity value of 3, and something worth fighting for may be assigned horror dealt to other investigators at your location.
Also, Nate, I can't die here. Not now. Not yet.
Yeah, the flavor text is
Flavor?
great.
It is great. That's awesome. I feel like this card is a much better version of True Grit than
Well,
It's kinda like-
for Guardians, absolutely.
yeah. It's kind of like Chair's Keepsake versus Leather Coat. I tend to find that I like Chair's Keepsake more than Leather Coat in most of my decks. But
Right.
maybe that's just me. But yeah. So those are 2 cards that really pique my interest. I'm honestly kind of just now looking at Crack the Case and these other cards. So while I do that, why don't you guys talk about the cards you like from the pack?
Scroll of Secrets, Lang, go.
I don't think there's anything to use it with right now.
Oh, you're killing me. I just like the fact that you've got all those options. Add it to your hand, place it on the bottom of the deck, place it on top of the deck. I mean, it gives you control, but you can also futz with the Investigator or the Encounter deck. And if you had 2 of them, you could do some fun combos. I don't know. I kind of like that concept.
It's interesting. I don't like the hand slot used for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't really see myself using it in something other than Daisy.
Is it an action?
Yes.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, see, I'd see that as a Daisy card. It's a tome and it has an action on it. That
Yep.
to me screams Daisy.
Yeah, you're right. It does.
I think I really like Crack the Case and Meat Cleaver. Crack the Case, for those who haven't seen them, it's a fast action, 0 cost event. Play after an investigator discovers the last remaining clue at your location. Investigators at that location gain a total of X resources distributed as you wish. X is the total location shroud value. And just last week we were talking about the need for more resource generating cards, especially for Guardians and Seekers, and it looks like Seekers got a pretty good one this time.
Yeah, wow. I'm just now reading that. That's incredible.
Yeah,
It is a little conditional, but I mean, as a seeker, you are gonna discover clues. So
Yeah, well, survivors and rogues and mystics got theirs in the last cycle, so I'm not really surprised to see crack the case come now, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Guardian card that generated resources released at some point this cycle. And I mean, any card that generates you resources is immediately going to garner a lot of attention, especially if you've got to pay for your fingerprint kit or connect the dots.
Yeah. They really needed that card. I'm glad that they came out with it nice and early too.
And now, Zoe, isn't that Lang? Didn't you say you like playing Zoe a lot? Meat Cleaver is like the best weapon. So beautiful.
It's very thematic at the very least.
Yeah, but I mean, a carte blanche, you got that one attack, but if your sanity's starting to flag, you get stronger, and you can heal a horror, / you can take additional horror, which would work. I don't think Agnes can take survivor weapons, can she?
Yes, she can.
Shows what I know. Boom, there you go. You got that chance to do extra damage and extra horror and all that. So, I don't know. I like Meat Cleaver quite a bit.
Yeah, and Agnes, she can take a horror, and then I believe she could trigger her ability, could she not?
Yep.
That's exactly correct.
So for +2 damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, Meat Cleaver is very interesting.
And she works in a restaurant, not like she could thematically just have one with her.
It's very true. Her and Zoe work together.
Yep.
I really like Meat Cleaver. I think it's a great addition to the Survivor card pool for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It seems to work well in those Ashcan Pete builds with the Desperate skills. As it gives you +2 fight if you have 3 or fewer remaining sanity.
Yep. I can see that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that card seems really good.
It seems to fit a lot of different investigators, like their little quirks, like Agnes and Carolyn and Ashcan. It seems to fit quite a few different investigators in different ways, and it just seems to work great for all of those.
Yeah, definitely. Is this something that you think will replace Fire Axe in most decks, or?
Ooh, Fire Axe is pretty versatile. That'd be hard to see.
No,
I don't know that it would replace
I would be. I need to look at Meat Cleaver and see. There's a lot of manipulation going on there. Whereas with Fire Axe, you're just spending the resources and you can get up to +6 and a damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the double damage when you're empty.
Yeah,
I think it's a nice supplement or addition to the pool of options, but I don't think it would necessarily replace Fire Axe in a lot of Fire Axe decks.
Wait, did you just say it wouldn't replace Fire Axe in a Fire Axe deck? No, because that would be a Meat Cleaver deck.
Right. Yes, that's. Now, what about this Enchanted Blade? What do we think about that?
It's interesting. Why don't you go ahead and read it for the listeners?
It's a Guardian and Mystic card, costs 3 resources. It's an asset. It takes a hand and a arcane slot, and it uses 3 charges. Action, fight. You get +1 combat for this attack. As an additional cost to initiate this ability, you may spend 1 charge to empower the blade, and if you do, you get +1 more combat and +1 damage for the attack.
It is also interesting to note that the card takes up both a hand slot and the arcane slot.
There you go.
So it's pretty interesting. I like it. I mean, it seems pretty good for Diana.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of perfect for Diana. It lets her fight with a +1. She can deal the extra damage if she needs it, and if she doesn't have to waste a charge if she just needs to kill off a creature that's got 1 health left.
Yeah,
I think if you're a dedicated Guardian, you're probably not gonna take it just because of the. I mean, you really need that plus damage.
Yeah.
And if you're fighting, if you're the one who's got to fight, 3 charges isn't going to be enough.
Yeah, you'd almost rather just pay an extra resource for a 45.
Yeah, or a machete. I mean,
yeah.
Guardians don't have trouble generating extra combat icons. It's the damage that's the key. And so, 3 charges. It's just
it's also a relic, so some things can work off of that.
Oh, true.
Yeah, it's good for killing geists and all those nasty geists and stuff like that.
I would say it'd be good for skids if the Thompson wasn't in this set.
What do we think overall about the dual class cards? Is that throwing everybody for a loop too much as far as their organization, or are you okay with it so far?
No, I'm fine with it. I think they're interesting. I'm not crazy about a lot of them. I think when Scroll of Secrets and Tennessee Sour Mash and Grizzly Totem were initially dropped, Sour Mash didn't really wow me. Secrets didn't. Thompson, it's got the best. If it didn't cost 6 and take up 2 hand slots, it's a fantastic weapon. +2 combat and a damage. But it's for me, when I'm as a solo player, taking up 2 hand slots is a pretty big ask when you need the other hand slot for something else like a flashlight. And 6 resources is going to be steep for Guardians.
Yeah.
Until they get something like Ever Vigilant to bring down the cost.
I think so far the dual class cards are underwhelming. I do like Thompson in a Skids deck. Pretty much that's the only deck I like it in. And the Enchanted Blade in a Diana deck. But other than those two, the other ones are extremely underwhelming in pretty much any deck that I can think of.
Oh, you don't want to play your 45 Thompson with your Contraband? You double up on your ammo. You have 10 ammo.
So
that's what I'm using it with. So the Thompson the way I'm using it in Skids is with the upgraded Bandolier. It's taking up the 2 slots, so it's giving him the willpower boost. You can double the ammo with the Contraband. It's really working great for Skids, but that's pretty much it.
But with a Bandolier, for Skids, yeah, he can afford to pay. When you add a Bandolier on top now, I think it's 8 resources.
Yeah.
Contraband's another 4 on top of that. So that's pretty. You need really good resource generation to be able to pull off something like that. And I'm not sure
it's
many. Yeah, you'd really need to build around it.
Yeah, I can just imagine what is it, Skids and maybe Finn. You get 2 Thompsons going at once, and then you can just sing "Hold Me Now" for like the whole rest of the scenario.
It's not bad in Jenny either. Jenny has the resources to pay for it. It does take up one of her out of class slots. It's not the worst. +2 is good, and extra damage is good. So it's like an extra copy of her twin 45s.
So now that you mention this, I don't think it takes up one of her slots. This was one of the big controversies with these dual class cards. I'm going to look up the rule real quick, but I think if the word other is in the deck building requirements...
You have to go with the one that's more restricted. So if you can only take 5 Guardian cards and unlimited of your other one, you have to put it as one of your 5 Guardian.
Yeah, I think that's what it says in the initial article as well, because they give an example with
there's been several updates. So the booklet that came with the set was different than the article, but then they posted in the FAQ online on the release date of the pack. I'll find the rule. Just give me a minute, I guess.
Okay, we'll link it in the show notes too for the listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was some confusion, because I think when I initially read Tennessee Sour Mash, I thought that Finn couldn't take it, but I think he has the other. He's the one who has, he can take other illicit cards, or however it's worded.
Yeah, I think you're right. Plus, I need to make a Finn alcohol
He
deck.
gets around it, whereas somebody like, maybe Norman, say if Norman wanted to play Scroll of Secrets for whatever reason, that would count against his Mystic slots.
Right.
Because it's a Mystic
because he doesn't
card.
have a workaround.
Yeah, he doesn't have a workaround that says, other tome, like he can include tomes and 5 other mystic cards or whatever.
Right. So this is the official FAQ guide for it. So it says if an investigator has limited access to one of the classes on a multi-class card and unlimited access to one of the other classes on that card. Okay, there it is. It will still occupy one of the investigator's limited slots unless their deck building options contain the word other in it.
Okay. Yeah,
Which is it's everybody but Norman. So Jenny, it wouldn't take up one of her slots since she can take unlimited rogue cards.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's interesting. So it seems okay with Jenny, but yeah, I mean, you're still trying to hold a flashlight with one hand, so it's like
most people do.
It's like Lang said, yeah, your 2 hand slots are really really high commodities. So, but maybe I'll try it out. We'll see.
Cool. Does that wrap up for the most part our first glance at the box set and the secret name?
Yeah, I think so.
Do we want to go into the fan-made scenario?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
I'll start off and then pass the torch over to Vase. Now, my apologies. Lang and Nate, have you done much in the way of playing any of the fan-made stuff?
I have not.
Okay. Ultimately, I think the quality of the official product and the official investigators is fantastic. I have 0 complaints for the most part. I mean, it really is an awesome game, an awesome system, and I don't feel like anything's lacking. What I do like about fan-made stuff is that you feel the creativity, the passion in the community, the desire not to usurp, but simply to add options, and I think that's beautiful. As a result, I have every fan-made that's been made, all sleeved up and ready to go. I try to run them. I try to run all the fan-made investigators. There tends to be some weird power issues with the fan-made investigators, but by and large, tons of fun. And against the Wendigo, of playing all of those, is easily one of my favorites. It's just very solid. And I even reached out and talked to the author, who I believe is French, about what got him, interested in doing it. And he wrote this novella without cards. It did not come with cards. But he wrote this novella back to me of sorts, talking about all the playtesting that he did for over a year, went through multiple translators to get it to English, reached out and contacted all these people that did Native American art, because it has a strong Native American, Canadian, Rocky Mountain frontier theme to it. And because he was very set on getting people's permission to use their art for this project, whereas there's some people like, whatever, I'm just going to use this trademark stuff, and and then he found some people that granted him permission, and people that offered to translate it, and even some people that did custom art for it. I don't have the names in front of me, but I was blown away with the dedication. And as I was playing it, I was like, this is really fun, really solid. But consequently, we talked about Rita earlier. One of the people that we played with, somebody played, I believe, Joe Diamond. Another person played Rita. And Rita was running around the map against the Wendigo, almost like the Flash. I mean, she would go run, grab a clue there, move over there, scout over there, pick somebody up, drop them off, all in one turn. And you're like, holy crap. And she had the track shoes. Track shoes are incredible. Vase, what do you want to start us off with as far as the content for Against the Wendigo?
Just real quick, that's an amazing feat, because in the locations, there is a mechanic that kind of slows down your movement. So if she was running around in this scenario, that's pretty incredible.
She was going sideways, and yeah.
Yeah, Against the Wendigo takes place in Canada. It's I can read the introduction if you'd like.
As long as it's not more than an hour.
Yeah, it's so what it says is the story unfolds a few weeks after the end of Alone Against the Wendigo, a solo adventure written by Glenn Raymond. In that supplement for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, the reader plays Dr. L.C. Nadelman, rising star of the Department of Anthropology of Miskatonic University, gone on a scientific expedition with 3 of his best students. Their goal was to explore the North Hanina Valley, a largely unknown and mysterious territory of Canada's far northwest. So it's not necessary to know the original story, but basically you're following up after this expedition. No one came back from the expedition, and you are kind of just investigating what happened to them. And little by little, you start kind of finding little traces of the individuals, and you can find out what happened to each one of them or just some of them. And there is a randomness. Yeah, you have to, unless you die, so you can you can miss on a bit of that. But you do start. There is some randomness to their fates, which is pretty interesting because it adds to the replay value. Kind of like one of the official scenarios. The actual outcome of the expedition can be randomized, so each individual had something different happen to them each time that you play. So that's really interesting. The locations have unique mechanics, and you're going up the river and into different wild locations and uninhabited
I thought the river
woods
was
locations.
awesome.
The river's
That
great.
added a neat. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have the option to either traverse the river by foot, which has some really bad negative consequences if you try to do that, or you can try just taking a little raft, which again has some requirements if you want to be successful with it. So it adds another dimension to the not just the difficulty, but the dynamic of the way the scenario plays out.
Yeah. And then coupling along with that, they had neat interactions with wildlife. They have interactions with indigenous peoples. There's Mounties and other cavalrymen. There's civilized areas, wild areas, different effects. One of the key mechanics I thought that was cool in this one is whether it be the rapids or being lost in the woods or even the animals. Like I remember we were a couple areas away from a wild animal that popped up, and I didn't want to fight it. I couldn't fight it. And it was like it might go away if you pull the right token from the bag at the end of the round. And I'm just like, go away, random animal, like buzz off. And so it kind of felt like there were like real animals running around the board. The game gets darker. I mean, it almost feels like if you've ever seen Tales from the Dark Side, where it starts in the light of day and then the music gets creepy and it fades to kind of the reverse. It has that feel where it seems optimistic. You're going to go find something. Everybody's fully stocked. Does that sound like the beginning of Forgotten Age? And then all of a sudden things get dark and you start finding evidence of this or that or shredded clothes or a chopped up journal, and etc. I'm not giving anything away, but if someone has the ability to try one or two fan maids, I would put that at almost a necessity. It was very well done and has massive replay to it.
And it's seething with flavor. It's the wildlife. I think that was one of the coolest things in the scenario for me. It really had the way they randomly moved around or popped up in different areas. It really did feel like wildlife to me too. Using the aloof mechanic, the hunter mechanic, along with randomness of the chaos token pulls and having them behave in certain ways, it was really awesome the way that played out for me as well.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for letting us give a little talk about that. I know the two of us stole the show for a bit doing so, but definitely a lot of fun.
Oh, no, definitely, no problem. So if I was interested to learn more about these custom scenarios, where can I learn more about that?
Hey, I feel like that's a setup. So I'm actually working with Karsten from Arkham Central. I ran across Arkham Central because I like the concept of the fan maids, and I've been talking with him. He's awesome. And he actually made me an admin on the site. So as soon as I started getting involved with him, I got all the information for. He already had fan maids down pat, but I put links to podcasts. I put links to crafters in the community. By the same token, Daphne from Needle and Threadly, Andresa from Momo Monster Co. up in Canada. Brian, as I said, from Rite of Seeking. That's a great source for fan-made scenarios. It's a great source for links in general. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of create a little hub for people to do so. But let's say, for example, you wanted to check out Against the Wendigo. You would simply scroll on the list of fan-made content. It has a both download button and the ability to rate it so that you can kind of have it rated by your peers. I would say, having printed them all off, I go to a local place that does copies, in this case Office Depot. They do it on 110-pound cardstock in color, which is a nice 30 sturdy stock. It's usually $10 to $20 to get a fan-made scenario printed off. Maybe a little more if it comes with a booklet. I know Against the Wendigo does, but it's not a thick booklet, and I have it spiral bound like all my other stuff. And then you have that adventure to share with others, but that would be my recommendation. I sleeve everything in Ultra Pro, and then if I need to, I'll put the backs of extra cards on the back, whether it be player cards or treacheries, etc.
Nice. Well, very cool. That sounds awesome. I'm definitely going to print this off and try it out for myself at some point.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah, I definitely will try it out. Maybe I'll do a gameplay video of it and put it up on my channel.
There you go. Oh, side note, just real quick, going back to the fan made, like Vase mentioned earlier, I worked with Andrew Migliori to make a fan made for the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, which I think there's a branch that does it over in Providence. Do you know about that?
I am ignorant to that. I have no idea.
So it's been going on for roughly, I want to say 24 years now, but it's world renowned. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, there's shorts made. So good, so incredibly good. If you like anything Lovecraft, they've got them on I think the ArkhamBazaar.com. You can order shorts from previous years. They will blow your mind. They are amazing. But he said, hey, I want to make a fan-made scenario. And he had a lot of the details and the ideas and locations around town, around Portland. And I came in with some more ideas and some mechanics because I play a lot. And it's fun. It takes place with the Prohibition, and there's a lot of sailors and people getting shanghaied. And you go down into the tunnels and you look for clues. It is brutal, single player laying, so be warned if you ever do try it out, it will be kind of a pain. But we are working on getting it polished up and getting it up on Arkham Central or out to the world fairly soon. We just need to sit down and make some time to make sure it's fully ready. But anyway, sorry, I wanted to give a final plug for that because I'm excited to bring it to the masses.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'm just now checking out your website for the first time, and yeah, it's very cool.
Arkham Central?
Yes.
Yeah, and full credit goes to Karsten. He is the generator of the site, the continued conductor. I'm just starting to get into it now.
Nice. So moving on from fan-made material, is there any other non-Arkham stuff that you guys wanted to talk about real quick before we closed out the episode?
I don't have anything else this week other than the fan-made scenario.
Yeah, I honestly don't really either. I did pick up a copy of Hour of the Huntress since that was back in print, so I'll be doing a reading through that over the next week. So
yeah, I saw they had reprinted Carolyn's book and Silas's book, and I need both just because I had Silas's book, and then my son poured water all over it. Not all over the book, all over the cards. He managed just to get the cards. The book is fine, but the cards are destroyed, unfortunately, and it's the cards I want. The book, he could have poured water all over the book, and I would have been probably fine with that. But so I need another copy of it. But I know it. I saw they reprinted it, and then I haven't seen it come back up yet for sale here in Canada.
Which one? Ire of the Void?
No, I've got Ire of the Void. It's
That's the other one. I'm sorry.
the Black Wind, I think it is, and
That's Carolyn.
Yeah, and I can't remember what Silas is called offhand.
Deep Gate.
The Deep Gate.
The Deep Gate. That's
Gotcha.
right. They seem to have what's his name? Roland's book. But
That's Ire of the Void.
Yeah.
Or that's Norman
Yes, it
Withers.
is.
I can't get any of them right. I have them all. I just can't remember the names.
The Dirge of Reason or something.
There you go.
Reason. Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, so I guess with that, we'll if nobody else has anything to discuss before we wrap things up.
Yeah, so the last thing I want to touch on is in the closing here. And I just want to make sure I understand everybody's kind of outlets, because it seems like everybody in this channel has a strong desire to create content and to add to the community. And it's for the people out there that have the same desire, or that do podcast, or that make things, it's not really a choice. You feel like you have to do it, and you just do it, if I'm not mistaken. The Man from Lang has many episodes, reviews, and run-throughs. I came late to the party on that. I even posted, I think, and Lang saw it. I was like, hey, I've been missing out. These are pretty awesome. I'm going to start binging these. And they've been a lot of fun. I think Vase, Twisted Tentacle In episodes, you have those up on YouTube.
Yeah, we're on
also
our,
similar thing where you
almost-
kind of go over. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're almost at 100 episodes already, which is just mind-blowing to me. I can't believe how fast that happens. It's crazy. But
Yeah, and Lang, I'm sorry,
yeah.
how many episodes are you at?
I think I'm at 160 or close.
Okay, so obviously both of you have a lot to say, and I've enjoyed both of yours. And now, Nate, Lost in Time and Space, how long have you been doing that?
Since middle of October.
And that surprised me, because I was listening to, when you were talking about Lang, you said, hey, we've got the veteran here with all his 450 plus playthroughs, and you had just started, but watching some of your videos and listening to you talk, you obviously are invested in it and clearly enjoy talking about it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the best. No, that's the best answer. That should be like flavor text on your investigator.
Yep.
And I didn't make a podcast. I didn't make previous episodes. I think where I poured all of my passion into it was reaching out. I do a lot of giveaways for the community. I know Vase does as well. Not having tracked either Man from Lang or Lost in Time as much, I know you do some, obviously. And then I started sharing pictures on Instagram simply because I almost felt like I was bragging when I was posting pictures at first, but I definitely never feel like I'm bragging. I think it's awesome if somebody's at a kitchen table without a mat and maybe has toothpicks and they're just into the game. I think that's awesome. But I want people to understand that there's a sickness in me that maybe you all share, where I just have to have background music. I've got a Sonos speaker. I have to do a setup. I like having individual tokens for everything in the game that requires tokens. Don't ask me. So that's my bent on things. So if I can add those pictures and atmosphere to the culture, I'll do that too. But as I said earlier, you can find my stuff either Arkham Central. I'm going to start getting some stuff on there and start doing some more things with Arkham Central soon. Or on the Instagram, Arkham Horror Images of Madness. So sorry, I wanted to clarify that for people in case they wanted to find your stuff.
No, we always appreciate shameless advertising here on the Great Old Ones. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I think with that we're gonna wrap things up here. I want to thank you guys as always for watching. We're relatively in mark with our hour and 30-minute goal. But yeah, thank you guys as always for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, take care.